The Expert Series is brought to you by Draw It Paint, a dry erase paint company that allows you to create the exact space you want. Our products are designed for performance, engineered for durability, and manufactured for quality. Draw It Paint's 3 formulas will allow you to reach every possibility. Behold your best work.
Tax accountant, so we have a deadline coming up, so it's pretty hectic these last couple of weeks, but happy to be able to take a break from doing tax returns for a little while.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate the time that you're taking today. We know you're very busy, of course. I just wanted to clarify, how much time did you actually have?
I blocked out an hour.
Perfect, yeah. Most interviews last just under an hour to within 5 minutes usually, so it should be fine, yeah.
Okay.
I'm Noel. I'm the Junior Marketing Associate from Draw It Paint. I've been contacting you the past week and a half or so.
Mm-hmm.
Nice to finally meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Do you have any questions for me before we got started here?
No, I think I'm ready.
Yeah. Have you done anything like this before?
No. No, so this is a first.
Yeah. Just to, I guess, give you clarification of what we're going to be doing with the footage. We're going to be cutting the full interview into shorter segments, whether they're 30 seconds to a minute, which will be launched through our Instagram. And then anything longer than that will be on our YouTube. The point of the Expert Series is to, of course, highlight your career and tell your story. We've seen a lot of different media companies cover celebrities and famous people, and we kind of wanted to cover the everyday person, the normal/regular person, for lack of a better term. So, yeah, we really appreciate you doing this, and we're glad to have you.
I definitely appreciate you reaching out to me. I definitely appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're looking for industry professionals. We've contacted doctors. We've contacted real estate professionals, marketing consultants, financial consultants, and now accountants. So we love to get your opinion on some certain things, talk about your career, and then anything else that's going on in your life. So
okay.
Yeah. So
I do want to point out, I know a lot of the questions just specified accountants, and I am an accountant, but I'm a tax accountant specifically. So I don't know if that's if that makes a difference or anything, but a lot of the questions I'll be answering from a tax accountant perspective as opposed to accounting in general.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure to clarify that to our audience and have your exact representation.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess without further ado, if you want to give us a quick introduction of who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Kesha, and I live in the Atlanta area. I've been living in Atlanta for all of my adult life. I moved here in 2005 for college. I went to Georgia State University for accounting, and I am a corporate tax accountant. So I actually work in industry for a publicly traded company doing the company's tax returns. And I also am a tax advisor to individuals and small business owners. So during tax season and throughout the year, if they have any questions about how to prepare their tax return or how tax law changes and updates will affect their personal or small business taxes, then I am able to offer advice to them or answer their questions as well.
What made you choose Georgia State?
Georgia State was actually my backup choice. So I actually got into all 3 schools that I graduated or that I applied to, Georgia State being my fallback choice because everybody else in the high school that I went to they went to either 3 schools. They went to Savannah State University, Georgia Southern, or Georgia State University. And most, there's a very small number of people that went somewhere else. And so my first choice was Spelman College. And then my second choice was Clark Atlanta. And then my fallback was Georgia State because everybody else was going to Georgia State. I didn't really know anything about the school. I had literally just heard of it when I decided that I needed a fallback. And I got into all 3 schools, but I quickly learned that Spelman and Clark Atlanta cost a lot of money. that I didn't have because they're not necessarily, you know, public schools. And so I decided to go ahead and go to Georgia State because I knew that I can get the Hope Scholarship that the state of Georgia gives to students who have certain, you know, academic, you know, GPA and things like that. And it actually, I think I made that, you know, that was the best choice. It worked out the way it was supposed to work because I love Georgia State University and I really couldn't see myself going anywhere else for college. So it worked out that way.
Well, I'm glad it did work out for you because certain people that end up choosing their quote unquote backup plan, it doesn't go according to what they had overseen, right? Or
right.
For. So yeah, that's awesome. Now you call yourself the stylish accountant.
I do.
Clearly you have a love for fashion. Where does this come from?
I actually have always liked clothes. I not necessarily fashion or style, but like having a lot of clothes. I've always had way more clothes than I needed. But I wouldn't really put clothes together in a certain way. Like I would just kind of just wear what I had. And when I went to buy clothes, I would just buy what was there, not really thinking about how the outfit would fit on me or how it would look with other pieces that I have. And it really wasn't until I actually got my job working in corporate that I decided that I really needed to be a little bit more intentional with what I wear and how I put outfits together so that I'm not looking, you know, I don't want to say bummy because I never look bummy, but, you know, that I'm looking more, you know, like an adult, like a grown up. And it's always about, you know, dress for the job that you want, not necessarily the job that you have. So I was no longer a high school student or a college student or a broke college graduate. I was a professional. I'm a accountant. And so I started being more cognizant of the clothes that I was choosing and how they actually work together. And I realized that I actually love putting clothes together and creating a look. And it started out with being more conservative because, again, I'm an accountant. Accounting is a very conservative industry to be in. They tell you that in college, like, oh, you can't wear bright colors in corporate America. You can't wear crazy color hair in corporate America or, you know, big jewelry. You have to wear black, blue, dark gray. And those are the things that I was kind of gravitating towards. But I realized that wasn't me. I like bold colors. I like big jewelry. I like, you know, purple hair or red hair. And so I just kind of started looking into my personal style and looking at what I actually prefer to wear. And thankfully, the company that I work for is a lot more progressive in that way, that they're not, you know, we always had a more business casual type of vibe. We don't have to wear suits and stockings and, you know, 2-inch pumps to work. And so I was already able to kind of incorporate my personal preferences into my clothing. And then they changed our dress policy to say that now we can wear jeans all the time instead of, you know, just on Friday. So I was like, oh, casual, that's my thing, right? So now I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go all out and I'm just going to be me and I'm going to wear all the bright colors. I'm going to wear jeans when I want to. You know, I still will put on more like business casual type of clothes because I take pictures of my outfits and I post them on Instagram. And I know a lot of people that are in corporate America are not in environments like mine where I can just kind of wear whatever I want to wear to work. So I like to give ideas of how people can still be true to themselves, but still follow that corporate America business casual guideline of, you know, slacks and skirts and blouses instead of jeans and t-shirts and sneakers. So I personally would say that I'm not really necessarily into fashion because to me, fashion is, you know, what the designers are doing, what the trends are, like kind of following those things. I'm more into just style, and that's how to just put things together, how to express yourself through what you're wearing as opposed to keeping up with what everybody else is doing.
I'm very similar in the sense that when people say, oh, you seem very fashionable, I kind of cringe Because to me, it's not about the fashion. It is more about the style and the fit and really representing who you are and what it is that you have, right?
Exactly. And I can wear something that, I can wear a shirt that I paid $100 for, and I can pair it with a pair of pants that I got off Amazon for $6. Like, it doesn't, I'm not into like necessarily the designers or anything like that. I'll buy what I like because I like it. I know it's going to look good on me, regardless of where it came from.
Mm-hmm. It seems like you get a lot of inspiration from work and your personal life. How would you describe your personal style?
I don't know. That's always a tough one for me because, like I said, I don't necessarily kind of prescribe to or pay attention to like the styles. I'm more of just like, what do I like? Like it's just a very personal. One day I could be all black, and the next day I can be like, preppy pastels or whatever. Like it's just. I think for me, my main concern is it comfortable? That's it over anything else. Is it comfortable? And I lean more towards casual. Even when I am more dressed up for work, I'm still leaning more towards the casual side than the more professional side. So I would say if I had to pick anything as far as a personal style, it would be comfortable and casual.
It sounds very versatile too.
Yes, exactly. It is, because you can choose. I mean, as long as I feel like when you kind of put yourself in a box of, I am I'm the girl next door, then kind of everything has to go with that. Or like I'm a glam kind of person, then, everything kind of has to go with that. And when you're not glam that day, then people might say, oh, what's going on? Or, like, whereas for me, I'm just like, it is what it is. I'm wearing what I want to wear today. I actually was a little bit more dressed up the other day, and somebody was like, oh, what's going on today? And I was like, I just decided to get dressed up today. Like, that's just how it is for me,
What advice would you give to someone who's looking to develop their style but are on a tight budget?
There's a couple of things that I think that people who are on a tight budget can do when they're trying to build their style. One thing is look at thrift shops and consignment stores. And that's really a big one, even though I haven't necessarily gone thrifting a lot, but you can get some really, really good quality pieces that were well taken care of from a thrift store and pay, pennies to what it was actually worth at the time that it was actually retail. And the same thing with consignment. I actually purchased a lot of my clothes now, or more recently, because I'm on a shopping ban this month because I buy way too many clothes. But recently, I've been buying a lot of my clothes through a online consignment Facebook group. There's a group on Facebook called the Blogger House Curvy Closet. Shout out to them. And they actually will resell clothing items from influencers, models, Instagrammers, YouTubers that are plus size. So it's for plus size women. And it's, you can get really good designer pieces for a very, very low price. And so if you're really wanting to build your wardrobe and you really want these good staple pieces and these quality pieces that are going to last, you definitely should look at shopping other people's closets. Another thing is looking at Amazon and Walmart. Those places have really good items for sale. They're actually stepping up their game. I buy a lot of my stuff off Amazon because Amazon is bae. And I actually have purchased, I was actually going through my Amazon list today to see kind of a lot of clothes that I've purchased because I'm trying to organize my wardrobe in an app. And I bought like dresses and skirts and pants and shirts and jackets and cardigans. This shirt came from Amazon. Like, I buy a lot of stuff off of Amazon, and it can be really decent prices because a lot of the time, it's from, just kind of regular boutiques and not necessarily a designer brand, but you really do have to pay attention to the reviews and the sizing because a lot of the sellers on Amazon actually use Asian sizing, which is it runs a lot smaller than US sizing. And just keeping track of sales and, making sure, looking at, when the brands or the companies, the stores are having their annual sales or anything like that, you can get in. Use apps like Ebates. I think it's actually called Rakuten now, where you can get cash back, so you're saving money on when you're making purchases. There's a lot of things that you can do, but definitely check out thrifting, consigning, and shopping at Walmart and a lot of those low price stores, because they're really stepping their games up with their fashion and style. Yeah.
Do you think people should kind of look towards investing in these long-term pieces that will stay in their closet for 5 to 10 years, or do you think they should go more towards the affordable pieces that don't necessarily last as long, but kind of match up with their budget?
I think that you should have a mixture. Like me, I have some stuff that I paid a lot of money for, but I know it's going to last a while, and I have some stuff that I paid a couple bucks for that's probably not going to last through laundry day. And so it's kind of good to have that mixture, because if you're constantly buying the cheaper things, then it can add up in the long run, because you're going to have to constantly replace them, especially if they're lower quality fabrics or just low quality. It's not made very well. They might fall apart. Like I had a shirt that the day that I wore it, the hem or the neckline, the neck collar, I guess, came off while I was wearing it at work. I had to take it off and kind of like revamp the outfit. But if you're not savvy with the needle and thread to put it back on, that's just something that you got to throw away. And so if you're only building your closet with these fast fashion pieces that cost basically nothing and aren't going to last very long, then you're going to constantly be buying things. And so it's really important to invest in some staple pieces, like some good jeans, some good jackets, just the basics, so that you can then pepper your wardrobe with the cheaper items here and there.
Yeah, it's good to have a good sprinkle and mix of both, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Now, just bringing it back to Amazon, you say you love it. I love it as well. I've been a Prime member for a while. How do you think the e-commerce experience has affected the retail world and the classic buying routine, I guess, or the traditional way of purchasing clothes?
Speaking from experience, I hate going to the store. I love shopping online. Most of my clothes come to me in a box delivered by my postman. And so I think that, if most people are like me, then a lot of businesses that are relying on the traditional come into the store and, shop and, we check out and you take it home with you. If they're relying on that and they don't have an online presence, then that can really kind of bite them in the butt, because a lot of people, us millennials, our phones are always in our hands. We're always at a computer. So it's very easy to shop online, whereas it's a whole deal to get up and get dressed and go to the store. And so I think for the bigger brands that don't really have much to offer in terms of differentiation from other brands, they definitely have to have some kind of online presence to be able to capture that market. But I think if you have a boutique kind of store and you offer something that you cannot get online, whether it's the customer experience or anything else, then I think that those stores really do have a fighting chance, because although us millennials love technology, we also do still love like the boutique kind of experience and the personal experience as well. And so I do think that those stores should still have some kind of online presence, so at least people know where they are. But I don't think that the online shopping market or trend will necessarily hurt them as much as these other big box stores that, don't really offer anything special.
Now, kind of touching on millennials, I understand you have a second Instagram page.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So my second Instagram page is the Millennial Taxpert, and it came about because I'm in the tax industry. I've been working in the tax industry for over 10 years now, and I now, like I said, I'm in corporate America where I'm working in corporate taxes, but my background is still in personal income tax, small businesses, and I still work individuals and small businesses as well. And just answering their questions all the time, and just seeing people ask questions in different places, whether it be on Facebook or Reddit or just some random place. I just understand that a lot of people don't get taxes. They don't understand it. Even the simplest questions that you can think of when it comes to tax, or at least simple for me because I've been doing it for so long, they don't understand. And also taxes are very scary to a lot of people. And, a lot of people just kind of don't even want to deal with it. They shut down when they even hear the word tax. And it can be very boring to learn about to people who are not in the industry. Even the people in the industry, I sit through some tax classes and I'm like, I can't wait for this to be over. So I created a Millennial Taxpert because I wanted to have a place, a resource specifically for small business owners, but also other tax professionals, to be able to learn more about taxes in a way that it makes it simple, so it makes it easy for them to understand, so that they can kind of have some knowledge, even if they're not preparing their own tax return, that they can understand how taxes will affect their personal or business taxes, so that they can just have a little bit of more or knowledge about, what their tax situation is. Because a lot of people don't know. A lot of people really have absolutely no clue even about their own tax situation. They don't know how much money they make. They don't know what kind of deductions they can take. They don't know what kind of credits they qualify for. And this is their own personal situation. And as an accountant, it boggles my mind because I'm like, you should know that. You should know your financial situation, but a lot of people don't. And so in the tax law is, the IRS code is huge. And so there's so much in there, and it's all legalese. People don't understand the words that are written on the page. And so there's so much in there that people just don't even look. And so I created the Millennial Taxpert to be able to provide videos and ebooks and e-courses eventually. And I'm actually in the process of working on a tax academy for up-and-coming tax professionals to learn about taxes in a way that is simple and makes it easy for them to understand, so they at least have some kind of background. So when they do go to their tax professionals, in the case of a small business owner, that they understand what's on the page. Even if they don't necessarily get why it's on the page, they know what those numbers mean, so that they can understand that, this is why I owe, or this is why I don't owe, or, this is what I need to do to avoid having to owe in the future. Because again, even if you don't, my philosophy is, even if you don't prepare your own taxes, you should have an understanding of your financial situation.
Do you think this fear from a lot of these people comes from a lack of financial literacy being taught at a young age, whether it was in junior high, high school, and some don't even learn it through university, right?
Right. I think that definitely has a lot to do with it. I think it comes from, it's definitely passed down. We tell, society has made the IRS the bad tax guy, like the bad guy, right? And in some cases, it can be true for some people. The IRS come down on them hard, and it sometimes seems like they are, out for the little guy. But that doesn't make it helpful to try to explain to people, this is really what's going on, because they always look at the IRS as the bad guy. And that definitely comes from a lack of understanding of financials as a whole, especially if they're not understanding, how much income they make, or they don't understand how credit works, and they don't understand how even opening a checking. I've spoken to students or teenagers that don't even understand, how to open a checking account or how checking accounts work. They don't know what a credit card is or how that works. I've spoken to somebody who thinks that credit is free money. And I'm like, no, you have to pay that back. It's not free. And not only do you have to pay it back, you have to pay it back plus some. And, that comes from a lack of, not being taught in schools or at home, because even parents don't know. And they don't even understand how finances work, and they don't understand how taxes work. So they can't pass that on, because again, it just seems such a big undertaking. And they're like, a lot of people are like, taxes make me crazy. I don't even want to begin to think about taxes because it just drives me crazy. And so they don't teach it to their children. And then we get a whole nother generation of people who are afraid of the tax guy. So yeah, I think it definitely stems from a lack of financial literacy in general, because people just don't know about money, period. And taxes is just definitely a part of that.
I think you're really breaking the stigma that there's more to an accountant or a tax accountant than someone who's just after the little guy, right? With accounts such as your own, you really educate people, and I think that's the best way to kind of eliminate this fear that you're talking about.
Absolutely. And also the other side of it is that a lot of tax professionals don't want people to know. And I'm not saying that, that's the industry over. I know a lot of tax professionals who would love to educate people, but a lot of tax professionals are also kind of in fear that if the public knows, then I'm out of a job. And, I'm of the mindset of, people know how to make hamburgers, but they still go to McDonald's, like, just because they have a little bit more education doesn't negate the fact that tax professionals are here for the convenience, because people, even if they understand it, they're not going to want to do it. Like I said, I know how to cook, but I eat out a lot of the time because I'm busy, and especially this time of year, like I don't have time to cook every night. So I eat out, even though I know how to cook. And that's the same thing with tax professionals. Even if people understand how taxes work, they're still going to go to a tax professional if they're too busy to prepare their own taxes. So I'm all about education, because I just feel like the more the more power you have in your situation, and the more opportunity you have to better that situation. The more you know about taxes, the more opportunity you have throughout the year to try to limit your tax impact. As opposed to waiting until April when you file your tax return and find out that you owe a lot of money, or your refund's not as big as you thought it was, because you didn't have that knowledge to be able to do the proper planning throughout the year. And also, I feel like as a professional that educates the industry, it just goes to show, how my expertise, and it just kind of gives me credibility, because now they know I know what I'm talking about, right? So yes, I'm all about just educating people, because I just feel like information and knowledge is important, and especially for your own situation, you should know as much as you can so that you can be as empowered as possible.
I think accountants as a whole, especially recently, have just done a better job of marketing themselves, whether it's through a CPA commercial or an Instagram account such as your own. They've really seen the importance in getting to know their clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
And actually helping them through the process instead of just doing it for them.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, absolutely. Exactly, and that's one of the things that I'm passionate about is helping people understand, even if I'm just talking to other tax professionals, because I'm in a lot of groups on Facebook where other tax professionals ask a lot of questions, and if it's a quick question, sometimes I'll just drop it and say, here's the answer. But a lot of times I'll say, well, this is where you can find the answer, because this might get you the answer for this particular client. Me saying, this is how this works, this might get you to put that answer for this particular client, but you need to understand how to find the answer for the next client. Because if you constantly have to ask tax professionals, other tax professionals for the answer, then that can, hurt your credibility with your client. And so if you know how to, and it's not efficient, right? Because you have to constantly ask questions, wait for people to give you an answer. You go through, 50 million people giving you different answers, and you got to figure out which one is right, instead of you just going straight to the source itself. And that's the same thing with individuals, just regular non-tax professionals as well. Instead of you just having stuff done for you, you at least understand how the numbers got on the page. Because at the end of the day, as a taxpayer, you're responsible for what's on your tax return. So if you go to somebody and they don't tell you, you have no clue what's going on, they just put some numbers on the page and they say, here's your refund or here's your balance, you sign that paper, you sign that return under penalty of perjury that everything is true and correct. And I've seen a lot of taxpayers get burned because their tax person threw some numbers on the page and they have no clue where those numbers came from, and they can't defend themselves to the IRS, and neither can I, as a CPA and an enrolled agent, defend them to the IRS, saying that this is true, this is right, because nobody knows where those numbers came from. So that's why it's important, even if you're not doing your return on your own, that you know what should be on there. So if somebody shows up with a business with a $60,000 loss on it to boost up your income or to boost up your refund, you can say, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. So, you know, that's really the kind of crux of it is having the education, again, to be empowered, to be able to advocate for yourself, and also do the proper planning to minimize your tax impact.
Now, Kesha, we wanted to ask you, what are the main differences between a CPA and a non-CPA?
So there's a lot of things that a CPA can do that a non-CPA can't do. But I'm going to focus on the tax aspects because I'm a tax professional. So from a tax perspective, when you have a tax professional that is, we call it enrolled versus unenrolled. Enrolled practitioners versus unenrolled practitioners. Enrolled practitioners can be lawyers, CPAs, and enrolled agents. And I actually am both a CPA and an enrolled agent. And we have the ability to represent taxpayers in front of the IRS if they get audited or need any other kind of representation services. Whereas a tax professional that's not enrolled, they don't have that ability. They have very limited representation abilities for their clients only. So if you had your tax return done by somebody else and you get audited, then you can come to me and I can represent you for that audit because I'm a CPA and enrolled agent. But if you went to somebody else who doesn't have those credentials, they won't be able to actually audit you and stand in your place when it comes to you going to the IRS. And, you know, because when we say represent the taxpayer, we mean that, you know, I go as you. Right? So I'm going and saying, I'm here on behalf of this taxpayer, and this is what, you know, this is what we believe is true. Okay, yeah, we can see that might not be right, but my job is to act as your representative so that you don't have to face the IRS alone, or even at all in some cases. And if you go to a non-credentialed tax professional, and don't get me wrong, there are non-credentialed tax professionals or unenrolled practitioners that are bomb when it comes to their business. They know everything. They get educated. They, you know, they've been in the business for a long time. They know more than me in some instances, or other enrolled practitioners in some instances, but they are very limited in what they can do for you outside of preparing a tax return. And speaking of education, CPAs, enrolled agents, and lawyers, or again, enrolled practitioners, we're required to get continuing education each year in order to keep our credential. Whereas non-enrolled practitioners are not necessarily required to have that education. So you can have somebody who has been a tax professional for 30 years and learned taxes 30 years ago and never took a continuing education course. So they may not necessarily know what the new rules are or how things have changed, other than just kind of peeking here and there if they get a new question that pops up. And so I think that, you know, again, in the tax world, credential versus non-credentialed can create a war. But I think that there are people on both sides that are, you know, really great tax professionals. But if you want to go down to the specifics of what can you do as an enrolled practitioner, CPA, EA, lawyer, versus an unenrolled tax practitioner, the main difference is that beyond the tax return, we can help you with representation if you need to do an offer in compromise, if you are being audited or have some kind of correspondence back and forth with the IRS, we can help you out in that regard, whereas somebody else is not necessarily able to do all of that.
I do really like the continued education aspect of it. Do you think that that's allowed you to kind of stay on your toes and maintain your focus throughout your career?
Absolutely, because as a CPA and as an enrolled agent, I have to have continuing education for both designations. And a lot of the times it doesn't mix. So I have to kind of sometimes get double the CPE than somebody who is just one or the other. And you definitely even being forced to go to these continuing education classes, you learn something, because, you know, would I take continuing education if I wasn't required to? Personally, I probably would, because I'm about my business, but again, a lot of people don't. And so even taking these classes because I have to, you know, I learn a lot about the new things that's going on. And sometimes it piques my interest in an industry or in an area of tax that I had not necessarily been interested in before. And it kind of opens up another, you know, door for me to start digging down, in a rabbit hole for me to start digging down and learning even more about that. And, you know, things change. The tax law changes every year. Beyond the reform that we just had, tax law changes annually. And so if you're not getting continuing education each year, then you're not up to date on what's the latest and greatest of what's going on in the tax world anyway. And so because things change every year, you have to, it's imperative really to go out and get that continuing education, even if you're just doing it for the updates, because, you know, you're doing a disservice to your clients if you don't have the latest, if you don't know the newest things going on in the tax world. But yeah, definitely in the continuing education, definitely keep showing your toes, because there's so much out there. You can pick and choose from a lot of different topics, and you can take one 1 hour course just to get the 1 hour, and then open yourself up to a whole new industry or a whole new market that you didn't even have before.
Now, something we've really noticed from a lot of the experts we've interviewed is they've had some sort of mentorship throughout their careers, whether it was at the beginning or it happened in between. Have you received mentorship such as this throughout your career, or have you even been a mentor yourself?
I have, back when I very first started in tax back in 2009, I worked as in personal. I was doing personal income tax, and I worked as an employee for a franchisee for one of the big retail tax companies. And she was my mentor for a long time until we kind of just lost touch. And she was an enrolled agent, so she kind of got me really down that path of becoming an enrolled agent while I was studying and sitting for my CPA exam. And she's super knowledgeable. I loved her. She was like my grandma. She called herself like my grandma because she was an older lady. I haven't really personally had a mentor, even though I've been wanting one, but believe it or not, I'm not a very outgoing or sociable type of person. And so it's hard for me to reach out to people and ask them to be my mentor. But a lot of young tax professionals have reached out to me for me to be their mentor. And I just kind of tell them, you know, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer any questions that you have, because again, I don't like misinformation or wrong information being out in the world. And if I can help another tax professional have the right tools and the right resources to be able to, you know, service their clients appropriately, then I'm all for it. And so I don't have any official mentor-mentee relationships, but I know there are a lot of people that have reached out to me about being their mentor, and I am always open to answer any questions. And there's a lot of Facebook groups that I'm in that, you know, anytime somebody has a question, I'm there to be able to point them in the right direction. But I would love to be a mentor someday, an official mentor someday. I'm working on offering that, but I have to get over some mind blocks first.
Do you think social media has kind of created these opportunities to become a mentor for you?
Social media definitely is a blessing and a curse in the tax industry. Yes, social media definitely has created a lot of opportunities to become a mentor, to initiate a mentor-mentee relationship. Every single woman. It's usually a woman that reaches out to me, that has reached out to me in order and asked me to be their mentor, has reached out to me through social media. None of them are women that I had met in person in advance. And a lot of it is just because they've seen me on social media, answering questions and, and holding myself to a higher standard. And, they understand that I am an expert and, I have credibility. And so they have reached out to me to become their mentor. The downside of social media is that anybody can set up a social media account and call themselves an expert. And unfortunately people do, and they have no clue what they're talking about. And then those of us that do know what we're talking about have a hard time combating that, because the fake expert, what I call them, is out here, telling people the good thing or what people want to hear. And then when the real comes in and says, well, that's not actually right, it's hard for people to pull back. But yeah, social media is definitely a blessing and a curse in an industry that is so specific and centered around law, right? Because it's the tax law. What we do is interpret basically tax law. And so you have people out here that just will tell you anything. And then when we come in and say, well, actually the law says this, you can't do that. It gets tough to try to convince people that, they want to go along the right path.
Was it pretty annoying carrying that tax code around in school?
The tax code is a lot of pages. I did not carry it around. Luckily I was in school. I didn't graduate from school that long ago. Luckily when I was in school, it was on the internet. And so if I need to, it's actually, anybody can search the tax code. It's on, I think, Cornell's law website. They have the entire United States code on there. So if you want to see anything in the US code, it's on there. So even now, if I have a question and I need to get to the tax code, because when I have questions, when I want an answer to something, I want to go to the source. That's the difference between a really, really good tax professional or tax advisor and somebody who is just pulling things out of their hat. I want to be able to hang it on the code. And so even now I will go through the internet and go all the way down back to the code section that pertains to this particular item, whether I have a question or whether somebody else has a question I'm trying to help them answer. I will say, well, according to code, code section, whatever, this is the answer. So luckily, I didn't have to print it out and carry it around. And, it changes so often that it's really cost inefficient, it's cost prohibitive to have to print it out and carry it around, because as soon as you print it, it's different.
Yeah. Just a little background about me. My first 3 years of university, I was actually an accounting major, and I'd taken a tax class because you had to, of course. And we had to get the physical copies of the code.
Really?
So it was kind of like our Bible for that class, and we had to bring it every class. It sucked.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, my very first tax class, my teacher actually wrote the book. So we had his book. And then I actually, because I have most of my textbooks from school still. I graduated 10 plus years ago, and I still have my textbooks. And so when I was in grad school, I got my undergrad is at Georgia State in accounting, but my graduate degree is from Kennesaw State in taxation. And so I had all tax classes except for like maybe 3. And I actually went up to one of my tax professors and was like, I want to get a copy of the code. I want to have it printed out and on my desk. And he was like, why? Why would you do that? No, you don't want that. No, I'm not even going to tell you where to get it from. And so ever since then, I'm like, yeah, what's the purpose? So I just Google it. And like I said, it changes from year to year. So, it's only good. It's only going to be good for a little while before it's going to be obsolete. So.
Yeah. The pages were paper thin, like super thin too. I remember they were like.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So it wouldn't be so heavy. They had to take some of the weight out of it. Yeah, I'm sure. No, I know we didn't walk around with the code. Fortunately, because it's like 4 Harry Potter books. So. Yes. It's like thousands and thousands and thousands of pages long. No, thank you.
Yeah. Now going on into the next segment of our interview, it kind of focuses on certain adversities you faced throughout your career. Now, I understand that you did a Toastmasters event just a few months ago. I looked into your Instagram and saw that. And I was actually surprised to see that you haven't done much public speaking, or that you were uncomfortable in this situation. Can you kind of take us through that?
Yeah, so I joined Toastmasters earlier this year, and I finally did my very first speech in Toastmasters in June or July. And it was my first time actually like speaking in public, delivering a speech since college. And I mean like undergrad, like sophomore year. And so it had been like, probably 15 years or so since I'd actually delivered a speech. And that's not to say that I haven't spoken in public or spoken to an audience before then, because I did used to teach a basic income tax preparation course for people wanting to learn how to prepare taxes. But for me, it's a lot different standing up in front of a room of people who know absolutely nothing about taxes, and I get to be the expert, and I'm a little bit more comfortable, even though I'm still super stressed out and nervous, teaching somebody, as opposed to like standing up in front of a room and giving a speech about myself, and people are judging my speech giving skills. And so public speaking is not something that it's definitely a stressor for me. And I wanted to get into Toastmasters so that I can practice giving speeches so that I can become better at them, because with Millennial Taxpert and even with my job, I do plan on having some, getting to a point where I have to give speeches, or I want to be on the stage and speaking in front of people. And so I figured the best way to do it is to do it, right? So I have given 3 speeches so far. I actually gave my last speech was this week, a couple days ago. It has not gotten easier yet, but yeah, my goal with Toastmasters is to become more comfortable in front of an audience. Even doing this right here is like, my body is like on the inside. But my goal is to get more comfortable with speaking in front of an audience, in front of a crowd, so that, once I get to the point where, as, in corporate America, where I have to start giving speeches to maybe a board or the CFO or the CEO or the finance team as a whole, I'm not standing up there, and freezing. So yeah, that was the whole reason behind going to Toastmasters. And the first speech that you give in Toastmasters is always an icebreaker. And so it's like an introduce yourself to the club. And I'm really good with questions, as you can see, but I'm not good with a general tell me about yourself. So that added more stress onto that speech. But I did it and I didn't die. So that's the good thing about that.
How important do you think it is to come out of your comfort zone and push through these boundaries?
I always say you can't grow. What I say is growth happens outside of your comfort zone. So as long as you stay within, as long as you keep doing the same thing that you've been doing, that you're comfortable with, you're going to stay in the same spot. You might grow a little bit, but you're not going to realize your full potential until you get outside of your head and get outside of the box that you put yourself in and move past your comfort zone. That's where the greatest growth is going to happen for you. And so it's really important for people to realize that a lot of the limits that we place on ourselves are mindset related. We put them on ourselves. A lot of the limits that we think we have, we put them on ourselves, because what we really are saying is that I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not, I can't get in front of a group and speak. What I'm really saying is I'm not comfortable doing that. And so that's outside of my comfort zone. But you a lot of times can't get to where you want to go and have these huge dreams that you want to accomplish, or these goals that you want to accomplish, because they're on the other side of your comfort zone. And so it's really important that, and I'm not saying that you have to go out and just like knock down every barrier and, you know, all of a sudden you're like this super confident, I can do whatever type of person. That's not realistic. But starting out small and starting out with, you know, okay, well, I'm going to do this one thing to push me closer to my goal and closer to that boundary that I've set for myself. So eventually it's not going to be such a stressor for me to push past that boundary, because I'm already right up against it. Now, you know, my box is a lot smaller now because I'm pushing up against that boundary. So now it's nothing for me to just push past it. So yeah, it's definitely important, and it's imperative for people to understand that a lot of times the limits that we think we have, they're all in our head, and we just have to move on the other side of it and say, you know what, it's not gonna kill me if I try it. You know, I might come out as a better person, and a lot of times you do, and sometimes you don't, and it's like, okay, that didn't work, move to the next one, you know. But like I said, you know, I thought I was hyperventilating and everything before my speech at Toastmasters, and I'm still alive, and I've done it 3 times, so it's obviously not as bad as I thought.
By the sound of it, I think you'll be okay in the long run. So
Thank you.
yeah. With such an emphasis on education, could you see yourself ever teaching tax accounting?
I actually would love to create courses, and I'm actually in the process of creating a course for new tax professionals or people that want to get into the tax industry on how to prepare taxes and things like that. So from that kind of perspective, I've done it. I'm looking forward to doing it again. I'm already thinking of all kind of courses that I would want to create. As far as teaching in a college situation, I have considered it. I mean, that's not something that I would take off the table. My ultimate goal back when I was in college was to work for a little while and then retire and teach college. So, you know, that hasn't necessarily gone away. I actually even started a DBA program, a Doctor of Business Administration program, so that I can have my doctorate already when I get to that point, and I want to be able to teach so I can be Professor Kesha. You know, so that's definitely not out of the cards. But right now, I'm more focused on teaching tax professionals as opposed to like tax accountants that work in corporate tax. More looking towards teaching, you know, tax professionals who don't go the college route, but still want to be in the industry and still need to know, you know, the right way to do things.
What advice would you give to someone looking to get into tax accounting?
So from the 2 different sides, right? So from corporate America, if you want to go the route to where you want to go to college, you want to get an accounting degree, and you want to work in corporate or public accounting, definitely talk to somebody. Talk to somebody about, you know, the job and what's expected, because I don't think a lot of people know. I definitely didn't know when I went to school for accounting that there was even an option, you know, that tax was a thing. Like to me, it was accounting, right? And then you get to school and you realize that there's financial accounting, there's audit, there's accounting information systems, there's tax, there's so many different things. And so the main thing is you want to definitely speak to somebody talk to somebody that's already in the industry, and see if they'll answer questions about, you know, what's expected of a tax accountant. You know, what do we do on a daily basis? Because a lot of people don't know, even people in the tax industry that are not tax accountants. When I say tax accountants, I mean like in corporate tax accounting, because a lot of tax professionals they're not degreed accountants, and so they don't call themselves accountants. They just call themselves tax professionals. So when I think of tax accountants, I think of, you know, people that work for a company doing the tax books of a company, not necessarily just preparing a tax return, but which again is, as I went through school, that's what I thought tax accountants did, prepare tax returns for corporations. But no, we do a lot more than that. We do the tax returns, we do what's called tax revision, we do tax controversy, we do a lot of different things within the company. And it's important, just like there's a lot of different things that accountants can do as a whole, there's a lot of different ways that you can go in tax accounting. You can, you know, just be a federal person. You can say you want to focus on states. You can be compliance, which means that you do the tax returns. You can do provision, which is more the accounting side of it. There's so many different things. So you can, speak to somebody and have them explain to you what it is that they do and what the role entails to see where you want to go. And it's okay. Like in our job, we're a very small tax department. We do all the things. But in some jobs, they have hundreds of people in their tax department, and they're very, very specific on what they work on. To me, that sounds very boring, but it works for some people. So, it's very important that you kind of just have that understanding of, what it is that you're getting into. Just like anything, I would recommend that for any discipline that you go into. Try to talk to somebody up front and understood so that you know that that's what you really want to get into. From a non-corporate side, for people who prepare taxes and do tax planning and all kind of things kind of outside of the scope of corporate, definitely work under somebody. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I know how to do taxes, I'm just going to go out and do my own thing. But there's so much that goes into owning a tax preparation firm that you're not going to know just from taking the basic tax class. And so it's important to study under somebody for a season or two, maybe more, before you go out on your own, so that you can understand how to run a business. At the end of the day, our industry, I love it. I mean, it's not boring to me at all. I know some people are like, taxes, what? But, it's very exciting for me because no two tax returns look alike. There's so much to know. There's so much that you can niche down on in taxes. You can say, okay, I want to do taxes, but I want to focus on this particular client. I want to focus on this particular market. And, there's so much opportunity in tax. And, so if somebody wants to get into it from a, like I said, non-corporate tax perspective, there's, just know that there's so much that you can do and so much opportunity. So talk to as many people as you can about what they do so that you can get an idea of what you want to do moving forward.
Now, is this all what you did when you first started?
When I first started, like I said, so this is how I actually got into tax. I didn't know I wanted to do it until I was well, first of all, I got into accounting a funny way. When I was in, in school and you're younger, they always ask you what you want to be when you grow up. And I always wanted to be rich and famous. And my mom, the smartest woman in the world that she is, she knew that I needed a backup plan, but she never really said like, hey, you need a backup plan. She didn't want to, crap on my dreams. So she was more like, well, you should probably go to college for accounting because, there's a lot of people out here that they're rich and famous and people are stealing their money because they don't know anything about finances. So you should go to school for accounting so that when you are rich and famous, you know how to count your money. So I was like, oh, I'm going to school for accounting then. And I went to school for accounting. And then when I actually took my first tax class, I kind of realized that I did, I gravitated more towards tax. I love tax. I love the numbers involved in it. Who would have thought when it comes to like audit that accounting would be so many words and not as much numbers. Audit, I can't do it. It's not my thing, right? So, but tax is a lot of words, but it's also a lot of numbers too. And so I knew that I really, really wanted to be in tax. And so after I graduated from Georgia State with my bachelor's, as I was waiting to go to school for my master's and also studying for the CPA, I took a basic income tax class that I ended up teaching the next year. And I started working under a franchisee for the franchise that I worked for. And I worked for them for 2 years. And then I went out on my own before I got this job that I'm working now. I went out on my own and actually started on my own tax franchise for a couple of years. And it was tough. I mean, even after even after working under a business for 2 or 3 years, then moving into my own, it was tough to have that transition. But I had the basics down because I knew, the tax, I knew the tax side of it already. I knew how to customer service side of it already. But, so it kind of helped me to transition into ownership and owning my own firm. And even after I sold it and now I work full time with this company, I still do taxes on the side. And I think without having that, that start working under somebody else, then, it would have never, I would have been super lost my first couple of years in business. And even now I know, what to expect because I had that start. As far as getting in corporate tax, no, I didn't talk to anybody, which is why I say you should, because I don't think it would have changed my mind at all. But I was definitely, there was definitely culture shock when I got into the job, and I was like, oh, what do we have to do now? So so it's I didn't take my own advice, which is why I'm saying you should, because I've learned. I've lived it and I've learned.
It's definitely a big transition and adjustment when you get into the workforce coming out of university. So that's great advice.
Yes.
We're happy that you got to share that with us. Going into the last part of the interview is something we like to call the fun stuff. We ask you about, your city, as well as certain topics and trends that we'd like to pick your brain about. The first question is, what is your favorite thing about Atlanta?
My job is here. No, like I said, I moved to Atlanta when I was 18, right out of high school, moved here for college, and I just kind of never left. I actually grew up as a military brat, so I moved around a lot. So I never really kind of like settled into a city, I guess. And I still kind of feel like I'm a visitor in Atlanta, even after, 15 years of living here. So I don't do a lot except go home and go to work. So, I mean, Atlanta has it's very diverse. It is, there's a lot to do here for visitors, tourists and things. You have everything that's going on downtown. But as far as like my favorite thing to do, my favorite thing about Atlanta, my friends are here, my job is here, my house is here. I just feel like, wherever I'm at, it'll work. Yeah.
It's really cool that you say you have ties to the military and you're a military brat, because I think you're the fourth expert actually that we've had.
Really?
Yeah, that's been associated to the military in one form or another. So
yeah, really both of my parents were in the military, and my mom actually, she retired in 2006 and then immediately went to the Middle East as a civilian contractor. So she's still there.
What were your favorite places growing up as far as jumping around?
Oh my goodness. So I was born in Germany. And so I still have, even though I haven't been back since I was like 8 or maybe even younger than that, I still have, a soft spot in my heart for Germany. We went to Czechoslovakia, which every time I tell people that, they're like, who or what? But, I vividly remember like going to the salt mines in Czechoslovakia or in that area somewhere, like riding a little train through the salt mines, and we got to take salt rock home. We went to Paris, we traveled so much. There's, we, traveled so much when my mom was in the military, especially when we were overseas in Europe. But my favorite place is always going to be Chicago, because that's where my family is. I always tell people I'm from Chicago because that's where I definitely spent time there as a kid when my mom was deployed to places where my brother and I couldn't go. And that's where my grandma is and all my family.
Sorry, Kesha, you're there.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries.
Somebody called me. I thought I put do not disturb on. I apologize.
No worries. No worries. We can edit that out. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
But no, we're my favorite place in the world is always going to be home, which is Chicago to me. And that's because my grandma's there, my family is there. I go there, you know, pretty much every year for the holidays. And, you know, even though technically I'm from Germany because that's where I was born there, I always have my home ties are in Chicago. So regardless of all the, like, you know, fancy places that we went to, Chicago always holds a special place in my heart.
Are you a fan of the Chicago deep dish?
Yes, that's the only way to eat pizza. There's actually a Chicago-style pizzeria down here that I love going to. It's called Nancy's. So, you know, if you're ever here, then, you know, check it out. But yes, Chicago-style, that's the only way to eat it.
I've never had traditional deep dish, so I don't have, you know, much of an opinion on it yet. I've had like Little Caesars and it was garbage. So
yeah, no, you have to have a Chicago-style deep dish pizza. You are missing out. You got to get one.
Yeah, Chicago is like number 2 on my list of places to go to, just because I'm a big Bulls fan and I like a lot of things to do with Chicago culture. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my and I, like I said, I say it's my home. I haven't lived there. I've lived actually in Atlanta more than I've lived anywhere else. But I still have that connection to Chicago. And, you know, people ask me stuff about Chicago and I'm like, I really don't know that much, but it's still home. So, but no, yes, Chicago deep dish, Chicago style Italian beef sandwiches, Chicago style hot dogs. You gotta try all of it.
I'll put it all on a list. So
yes.
Now a couple overarching trends that we wanted to get your opinion on. Are you an iPhone or Android user?
Definitely iPhone. I've never really liked Android. I used to have a Windows phone back when Windows had phones. And I was actually very adamantly against iPhones. But the Windows phone that I had was like, you know, Windows doesn't even make phones anymore, I think. And I was like, well, if I have to choose between an iPhone and an Android, I'm definitely going to choose an iPhone. So now I'm like, I have an Apple Watch, I have an iPad, I have a MacBook, I have an iPhone. Like, I'm definitely team Apple.
I'm the same way. I got all the devices. I'm pretty much hooked, so they got me for life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now the second one, what's your opinion on the plant-based food product trend and as well as the Beyond Meat burger?
I've never had a Beyond Meat burger, but I think the plant-based food trend is good and bad. So the good, if it's actually like plant-based foods, whole, you know, like actual vegetables and things like that you're just turning into something, then I think it's, you know, it's good. It can, you know, it's vegetables, so it has to be healthy for you, right? But I think the issue is, and I actually even tried going plant-based. I'm still in the process of moving towards a plant-based diet myself. Not necessarily saying I'm giving up meat entirely, but just eating more vegetables and fruit and stuff. But I think the problem when it becomes a trend is that now you have all of these companies mass producing these products like the Beyond Meat burger and the Impossible burger and like all this other stuff, and it's still junk food. And so at the end of the day, it's still not necessarily healthier for you than, you know, eating a salad. But a lot of people feel, because, you know, people catch on the trends and a lot of people don't really do a lot of research. Another thing I have to deal with in my field, a lot of people don't think about the fact that, you know, this is stuff that's full of, you know, because they have to make it, and they have to make it cost effective, right? So they have to make it to where they can still make a decent profit. So they're going to make it as cheap as possible. And so they're using a lot of fillers. And again, this is just my, you know, I don't eat those products. I'm not really a big fan of meat substitutes. If I'm going to eat plants, it's going to be plants, right? If I'm going to eat, if I want meat, I'm going to eat meat. But I think that a lot of the time these plant-based junk foods are not really that much better for you than the original, but because people are so attached to this plant-based trend, you just it's just like gluten. It's like the whole gluten thing, right? Like, when gluten-free became a thing, everybody was putting gluten-free on stuff, and stuff that gluten never even really was in the first place. But because gluten-free was a trend, you put gluten-free on a bottle of water, and now all of a sudden everybody wants that water because it's gluten-free, when water is gluten-free anyway, you know? And so because people kind of have picked up on this trend of being plant-based, and now everybody wants to be vegan or vegetarian or things like that, you have all these companies jumping into it, and people are thinking like, oh, it's plant-based, so it's healthy. But it's not necessarily, you know, it can still be just as bad for you as non-plant-based items. So I think it's, you know, one of those things too that is good and it's bad. At its core, the plant-based movement, I think is awesome, because it's getting people to think about, it should be getting people anyway, in theory, to think about what they're putting in their bodies, and actually connecting more of what they're eating to, you know, how their body is reacting to that, and trying to be healthier, as opposed to just, well, this is what we've always eaten, or this is how our ancestors ate, when we don't have the same, you know, we don't do the same things with our ancestors, we don't work the same way, and things like that. So at the core, I think it's awesome, but unfortunately you have the people who come in and kind of mess it up and kind of take away from the original aspect of it.
Okay. Kesha, that pretty much brings us to the end of our interview. Today you've told us a little bit about tax accounting and your career, given us some fashion tips, and even gave your opinion on a couple overarching trends. Is there anything else you want to tell the audience before we let you go?
I just want to reiterate that everybody that's on Facebook is not on social media is not an expert. So anytime you see anything, and whether it come from somebody that's credible like me to somebody who just kind of popped up overnight, if you start seeing things on Facebook about how taxes work and things like that, always reach out to a trusted professional to get to the bottom of it and understand the truth, because it could be true, but it might not apply to you, or it could be absolutely wrong, which I see all the time too. So that's my main takeaway. Don't trust everything that you see on social media.
Some good advice, some great final words for us.
Thank you.